Hello, Starshine. My name is Liz, and this is my channel, Simsational Stories. If you have not seen my videos before, and you enjoy this one, please like and subscribe, and maybe check out my other social media as well. I'm on both Facebook and Twitter. All relevant links are in the description below, and of course, if you're a Sims player and you'd like to download any of my characters, just search the hashtag Simsational Stories on the Sims 4 gallery. All original content is created by This Is Not Eric. Finally, before I begin my Simsational story, I'd like to issue this blanket content and trigger warning. The following story is just Sims, hey. I'm not going to apologise for treating them terribly, if that's what I've done. But I do want to assure you now that although I mean absolutely no harm, I completely understand if you feel unable to consume my content. Many loves, and we will catch each other on the internet elsewhere. Okay, so now we've gotten that over with. Let's go. Today's story is from the Fundamentalist Ferguson family, and we're at chapter 7. If you have not seen previous chapters and would like to catch up, there are playlists available on my channel so you can hear the entire story in chronological order. The rest of us are going to move on from where we left off last time though. So without further ado, the Fundamentalist Ferguson family, consisting of Father Cameron, Mother Addison, twins Elijah and Esther, toddler Edward and baby Edith, lived in suburban Willow Creek in a beautiful bungalow with a flourishing vegetable garden and some barnyard animals. Cameron worked as a surgeon, while Addison was a happy homemaker who also homeschooled Esther. Each Sunday, they had worship, an official holiday which consisted of a community service ceremony, remembrance of the dead, having a consciously thankful spirit, the setting of resolutions for the week to come, and a grand meal. And on top of all of that, they also concluded the evening with their own private family ceremony. Cameron would preach a little, and then they would all in turn confess their sins of the week to him, which he would, of course, kindly absolve them of. The Ferguson family also believed in divinely ordained traditional gender roles. Ever since their arranged marriage, Addison had happily taken care of home, husband, and children as they came, without complaint nor need for complaint. Cameron provided for his family quite well, and Addison considered it not just her duty, but her God-given gift to be able to produce the picture-perfect family. And if you looked at nothing but the pictures on the wall, the Ferguson family were rather perfect seeming. It wasn't all untrue either. Cameron and Addison really were deeply in love. The twins had strong relationships with both one another as well as their younger siblings, and despite the differences between them and other Sims in the neighbourhood, the boys got on quite well at school. Esther did not go to school anymore though. Cameron and Addison had decided to homeschool their daughter, as well as any other girls they may have in the future, such as Edith. Esther was still taught everything that she needed to know, of course. She had regular lessons in reading, writing, arithmetic, etc. However, she was also taught the other, far more necessary, skills that would truly prepare her for her individual future. Addison wanted to make sure that all of her daughters would be ready to take care of their own home and family someday, and as such, from an early age, she had given Esther regular lessons in what she called homemaking skills: cooking, cleaning, simple household management, childcare, etc. While her brothers were encouraged to read their school books, Esther was taught to knit. She had now made her little sister Edith many outfits and was currently working on a scarf and hat for the family cow, Belle. It was rather hard for Esther during these years, always confined to her parents' strict schedule and rarely let out of their sight. All throughout their childhood, the Ferguson children were subjected to strong religious rhetoric from both their parents. Elijah, Esther, Edward, and Edith were never given a chance to make their own minds up. From the very moment they were born, they were indoctrinated into their parents' religion. Like their parents and grandparents before them, they were being raised into this life. Sons Elijah and Edward knew already that they were to one day become the heads of their own households, like father was to theirs, and hopefully they too would have as many devout and happy children as God could bless them with. And as young men of the church, they knew that they were already expected to maintain a certain level of decorum with the other young ladies they met, and that they weren't to make friends at school. Naturally, as a girl herself, Esther was under even stricter restrictions than her brothers. Ever since her parents had pulled her out of public school, she hadn't even spoken to another child outside of their home, and she was unlikely to any time soon. She would just one day go straight from her parents' home to her husband's home, and then go on to have children of her own. Elijah used to have a bit of fun making up horror stories about what it would all be like to scare his sister with. He knew that their father would, of course, pick the perfect man for Esther to marry, but there were stories of what happened when it all went wrong. Elijah went to school out in the real world and would tell Esther all about the many hungry, sad girls he would see on the bus whose husbands had left them. Of course, it wasn't true. Elijah had never seen a single hungry, sad girl on the bus, but he'd heard his dad talk about them, so he knew they were out there. Given that they were given such freedom, Cameron wanted his sons to be wary of the outside world and all its undue influences, and so he would often lecture them on the dangers of straying from the holy path. This, of course, included staying away from any young single girls they saw, happy or not. In general, Cameron was the only member of the household who really went into the outside world at all anyway. Elijah only went straight to school and back on the bus. And so, of course, it was Cameron who would know what it was really like out there. He worked as a surgeon at the Willow Creek Hospital, doing God's work and saving all kinds of sinners from the consequences of their own actions. It was at work that Cameron first met Samuel Longley, a young intern his father had recommended, i.e. commanded, that Cameron take under his wing. Cameron had quietly resented the order at first, but as had often happened in his life, he later came to realize that, of course, his father had known best once again. Samuel Longley was also a member of the church, very recently married and already expecting a baby with his new wife Cecilia. They were both quite young still, Cecilia just 18 years old, with Samuel 3 years her senior. However, Samuel assured Cameron that they were quite devout compared to most youngsters. From the earliest days of their marriage, Samuel had set clear boundaries for Cecilia. He was to be respected as head of the household. She was to dress modestly, be quiet and demure at all times, and of course, keep up with the cooking and housekeeping. Cecilia was an obedient young woman. Her father had arranged her marriage, and she had done her duty and married Samuel. And now she would do her duty as his wife, truly believing that because her father had bade her, and children must obey their parents, it was what God wanted her to do. Cameron and Samuel worked alongside one another for months, soon becoming close friends and sharing confidences. Cameron happily heard about the birth of his friend's daughter, Priscilla, and shared with him the secret joy that he and Addison were also expecting another child themselves soon. It was still early days, but it was their 5th child, and his obviously fertile wife was unlikely to miscarry. So he felt confident in sharing the news. They were so excited and couldn't wait. Cameron and Addison Ferguson were of the belief that each and every child was a blessing from God, who never gave them more than they could handle. And although they had 4 children already, they welcomed the prospect of a 5th child with open arms. Boy or girl, it didn't matter, and they didn't care. They were just happy to be finally having another child. Things were not so rosy over in the Longley household. Cecilia had always been told that having children was a joyous event, a miracle and a blessing from God, that she was meant to be a mother. And all this time, through everything she had gone through, she had always believed that. That had been almost like a talisman that had kept her going, that one day she would have her children and love them and finally be happy. But Cecilia wasn't happy. And worse, she didn't feel like she loved Priscilla at all. As the weeks went by, Cecilia continued to suffer from a deep depression, and, if anything, as Samuel went back to work, things began to get worse and worse. He would come home to an unclean house. No dinner even started, and a wife with the weeps upstairs in the nursery. He had read about postpartum depression in med school, of course, and he was sympathetic to the fact that her hormones were making her feel a little wonky, but she needed to get a hold of herself. Samuel would often ask Cameron about the whole situation, and Cameron would do his best to advise his young friend to be kind and patient with his wife. Although Addison had never gone through anything like this, Cameron knew and liked Cecilia. She had always been a good sort before all this, and probably just needed a little more time to adjust to being a mother. It would all work out in time. God had a plan. God always had a plan. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 7 of the Fundamentalist Ferguson family. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can tune in soon to hear the next chapter. And hey, maybe think about sharing my channel with a friend. Or don't. It's your life. Anyway, bye!